What's going on? What's going on, people? On behalf of Operation Rock, this is Clayton this morning with another educational broadcast into domestic violence, the family court process, intimate partner stalking, parental rights, people. What this encompasses is the entire sphere of domestic violence as it applies to a minority male or minorities in general. Hopefully, something that I say happens to educate or empower somebody. So maybe you don't go through the same thing I went through with an unfairly just and biased law enforcement system and family court process. Unfortunately, we live in a law enforcement system that does not favor minority males or minorities in general, but most certainly minority males. The system is designed to minimize us, to make it difficult for us to achieve the rights that we've also been granted due to bigotry, racism, sexism, favoritism, any one of those four factors. But for the most part, most of the time, minority males' rights are violated for one of those four reasons: bigotry, racism, sexism, or favoritism. And it's unfortunate because the rights of a victim shouldn't be dependent on whether or not you meet the criteria of one of the four. But that just happens to be the way the world is working. Today, I'm going to try to talk a little bit about parental rights, the rights of fathers, the rights to raise your children, some of the protections under the 14th Amendment with regard to your right to raise your children without government intervention. I'm going to keep it short because these are most effective under 10 minutes. So let's hope this works out for somebody. Um, man and woman, man and woman come together, they create a life. This life is created, the two are together, everything seems fine, the woman has a baby, reality kicks in because everybody knows that reality really kicks in a relationship when two people together once a woman comes in once a pregnancy comes into play. um, the biggest, I would say, strain on that relationship that could have once been beautiful is the baby, because the baby now requires additional income that might not have actually been planned on being there. So many times we go through these situations where we find people in situations due to financial strains or relationship strains, because now that the baby's there, maybe the woman is not able to be as sexual as she formerly was. After she has the baby, clearly her body needs time to recover from that. That puts strain on relationships. Now the baby's alive. The baby requires time. It's a baby. The baby's there all the time. The baby needs to eat. The baby needs to be held. The baby has to be changed and washed and all the things that come with raising a baby. So it'll put a strain on the relationship that sometimes and oftentimes causes those two people who could have once been together and had a positive outlook on producing a child to separate. Now, in that separation, one would think that the father had equal rights also. Now, yes, if the father was there consistently and if the father took care of the child, that the father assumed his legal responsibility for the child and acted in that capacity, then legally he does have the right to continue to be a part of his child's life. A mother cannot legally deny a father who has been active and who has assumed the parental role of a father the right to see his child. Many women do this by using family court in order of protections. An order of protection is called an ex parte petition. Basically, that means that you don't even have to be there. And the I would say standard of probable cause that's needed for an order of protection, people, is so low it's ridiculous. It's honestly a joke. And this is probably why the family court process is so like horribly messed up, is because the standard needed to get an order of protection has been reduced so low to protect the rights of women that you have women of unethical character now abusing this privilege and using it to get orders of protection on for men out of revenge, um, out of safety too, but more times out of less. Nowadays, people, it's out of revenge. Maybe a guy broke up with them, they didn't like that. Maybe the father cheated. Maybe she doesn't like the fact that the father doesn't want to be with her anymore. That's cheating. That's the same thing. For various reasons, some women will abuse the domestic violence process to get orders. Now, in doing this, their intention is to keep the father away from the child, and that immediately happens because the mother being the biological, I would say, the mother has the sole responsibility of the child. I was going to say biological creator, but she's not, because it takes two people to create a child. But the mother, being that she carried the child and birthed the child, she is the one who the state and honestly God has charged with the responsibility of carrying this child. So the state would never take a mother from his child because she has the beginning responsibility. She became pregnant. She had the initial custody of the child because the child was in her body. That makes perfect sense. So a father can't just simply come in and take the child. Now, if if the mother protests and she happens to put this order of protection. What the court will do now that there's an order of protection on her is that the father's visits have to be supervised, because if there's an order of protection on the mother and he can't go near her and she's the primary guardian, how does he see the child? This is what begins to damage the father child relationship in domestic situations. But because something that happened between the father and the mother, now the child plays an effect. Domestic violence is horrible, people. It is a horrible process controlled by racist bigots and people who are truly unethical and overworked. And the overworked people are the people I feel sorry for, because they may be the people who are in the family courts bogged down by these caseloads of just repetitive litigation filed by useless paperwork of people who are simply using this as a vehicle to get revenge. Because a lot of times when family court comes into play, people, it's not about the interest of the child. It's really about the interest of the two parties that are involved. And the people are leveraging and warring for the child back and forth. And in a lot of cases, you'll have one party who truly wants the child and wants to be a child, part of the child's life, and the other party that's simply trying to hold the child as a way to keep hold of the party that has left it. And I think that courts really need to start looking at that. No father should be denied a right to his child simply because the mother doesn't like him, or the mother happens to not like something he did. And I think that there should be a much higher standard put on how easily it is for a mother to take away a father's right to see his child. Now, with regard to court documentation, New York State and all states have constitutional law in place that states that removing a father's right to see his child without a proper hearing that weighs the evidence, and it states on paper that the evidence is supposed to be of a higher preponderance or a higher burden. But the family courts don't apply that, people, because the mission is to separate, I believe, minorities from their children. So they make the standard of restricting a father's right to see his child. They reduce it beyond the federal level that's mandated, and make it so small that basically it becomes on the basis of the very order of protection that the mother may have lied about. So the mother can lie and say that the father did something to the child. And based off that lie, with no evidence, with no investigation, the court will immediately restrict a father's right to the child. Now, when a father does that, if a father alleges any kind of misconduct with a mother, the mother simply has to claim domestic violence. And the sad part about it is, people, that ACS will actually favor the mother, even though there may be an allegation that's a valid concern that the organization needs to look at. They'll overlook it if the mother alleges domestic violence, because again, people, the agenda of these agencies is to break apart families. The more families they can break apart, people, the more jobs they have, the more people who have job security. So their job is not to have stable, I would say, loving, structured families. Their job is not truly to mediate the family process, to mediate the negativity or the hostility between parties. No, their job is to continue that hostility as long as it goes, because as long as there's court proceedings going in place, people, they have jobs. So whenever your daughter's mother brings you to court, she truly needs to think about something, and fathers too. The only thing you're doing by continuing to bring your partner to family court for custody of a child that they should actually have and have the right to see is you're keeping people paid in court while you're denying yourself money, because these people are literally going to work to keep your situation going. Parental rights is real. Fathers, if you have access to your children and you can actually do the right thing, my recommendation, if you have a daughter's mother or a son's mother or whatever mother it is, and mothers, I can't say that to you, but fathers, is that you petition the court yourself for your rights. You petition the court for your custody rights or your visitation rights or whatever rights it is, you appear, and don't rely on the word of a woman who the relationship could change on the break of an eye. Because people, the relationships between men and women are fickle at best, and they need to be grounded in solid, I would say, solid emotional content, meaning that the emotional bank accounts in that relationship from past experience is strong enough that the two people respect each other. When respect is lost in relationship, people, that's when all the bullshit starts. And if it affects kids, I think it's a problem. So we need to look at things in terms of that with regard to people and fictitious reports with regard to domestic violence that keep children away from their fathers from the stupidity of their parents. Hopefully this was insightful. The point of this, hopefully that was caught, is that fathers who have heard this, you do not have the right to your child just because you got a woman pregnant. That takes action. But if you have been doing the right thing and you took care of your child since the day your child was born, your only obligation is to prove that to a court with receipts. and with proof that you've been taking care of your child and that you have made the honest and wholehearted effort to be a part of your child's life. If you can substantiate that on paper, if you can substantiate that with witnesses, then the temporary, I would say, injustice you will receive from family court, because that's exactly what it is. When family court denies parents the right to see their child based off minimal probable cause, that's a violation of constitutional law and a violation of that person's rights. But they use the magnitude and the overall behemoth of the system to violate the rights of so many people that no one bothers to complain about it until the day they become aware. And you usually become aware far too late to do anything. But it's a blessing if you can become aware while it's going on, because then that opens the court up to civil action that could possibly benefit you and your child even further. So knowledge is power, people. Take the time to learn the things you need to learn, not only for yourself, but your children, because your children are important. If you don't know your rights, people will mess with you and violate your rights. They will keep your child from you. You'll go years like I did until I had the basic intelligence, and I would say I was so tired of being lied to, and I loved my daughter enough that I decided to apply my intellect to something that would help me get her back, where I would have more control over the situation. And people, now I do. I know my parental rights. I feel confident with that. And in that confidence, I'm sharing it with you. So, on behalf of Justice and Operation Rock, people, today we talk about parental rights, the rights of fathers and fathers, what you need to do to seriously be considered by a court when you have a parental issue, whether your custody or your visitation is in jeopardy. Like, share, follow. Actually, people, I've been leaving this up to fight injustice. I should start asking for donations. So, people, $1, 50 cents, anything help. It'll improve the quality of the content, hopefully increase the educational material so I can spread the message and try to keep more people informed about their domestic violence rights and the rights of parents with regard to law enforcement, because people, that's important. On behalf of Justice and Operation Rock, damn.